Taking a relativist approach means that Fletcher rejected the need for rigid rules or laws. In fact, the only law he considered to be absolute was love. However, to ensure that we understand how and where to apply this love, he developed the 4 working principles. These are not rules or laws that must be obeyed. Instead, they are principles that develop what is meant by love so that we can go into any situation, however complex or diverse, and work out what is best to do. The first working principle is pragmatism. This is basically practicality. An act or behaviour must practically work towards a loving outcome or result, and if it does not, then it is not a loving act. Legalistic ethical approaches such as natural law would, for instance, say that there are no circumstances under which you are allowed to steal. However, situation ethics would look at the practical way in which love can be achieved, and if it will mean a more loving result to steal, then that is the good thing to do. Fletcher felt that we should enter into the situation with the rules of our culture and mostly obey them, but if the situation meant that more love could be achieved, then it is morally acceptable, even morally correct, to break those rules. For Fletcher, the heart of good ethical behaviour is the individual person in the situation that they are in. We must show love for that individual person, and in order to do that they must have a higher priority than the rules. Legalism puts law before people. No matter what the circumstances, the laws must be obeyed, and people serve the law. However, in situation ethics, the law must serve the people. If we are to obey a law, it is because it provides a loving outcome for the individual who is most affected or is closest to the decision. If that individual is not shown love by obedience to the law, then the law should be broken. It is useless unless it shows love. This approach recognises that it is the individual who receives the impact or the consequences of moral action and thus has to live with them. If we show compassion to those people, then we are living by the law of love. For Fletcher, there are no absolute rules except love. Everything is relative to love. Love is the law that must be obeyed, and all other rules or guidelines are flexible and can be ignored. This goes for any biblical commands too, such as the 10 Commandments. This is upheld in the teachings of Christ, who taught that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Here Jesus was pointing out that the rules were made to help people, but if they do not, then breaking them is the thing to do. They are not absolute and binding, only love is. To some extent it can be argued that this is more like a proportionalist approach than a relativist one. Proportionalism accepts absolutes, but allows exceptions. It is important to note that Fletcher was wanting to avoid anarchy and did not appreciate the antinomian approach, which allowed people to make whatever decisions they like with no guidance. Here Fletcher does have guidance and allows rules for the society to apply. However, he puts love as the priority at all times and believes that if love is not served, then the act should not be done. If the law says don't lie, then we shouldn't. But if we achieve a loving outcome by lying, say to save a person from an attacker, then lie we must. Positivism is often defined wrongly by candidates. Learn this definition carefully and off by heart. Positivism is the idea that we have faith first. Here the faith that Fletcher claimed we should have was in love. Reason cannot prove that love is the most important thing. Instead, we must trust or have faith that it is. Once we take this faith position, we can use our reason to work out how best to love. Reason determines the loving action only after we have taken the faith stance that love is best.